We're about to dive into one of the most incredible human events on the entire planet, India's general election. And over the next few minutes, we're going to explore how an exercise in democracy this massive is even possible.
So, let's just start with a number. Take a second to just look at this. 980 million. It's a figure so large, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. So what exactly does it represent?
Well, that was the number of people who were eligible to vote in India's 2024 election. To put that in perspective, that's more people than the entire population of North America and the European Union combined. It is quite literally the largest electorate in all of human history.
And out of those nearly 1 billion people, this is how many actually showed up to cast their ballot, 642 million, a number that actually set a brand new world record for democratic participation.
Which, of course, brings us to the big question, right? How on earth do you manage a free, fair, and organized election for almost a billion people? Well, the answer starts with a single, really powerful idea.
And that idea is the power of one single vote. It's the very heart of what you can only call a bold, and I mean bold, democratic experiment.
You know, these words were spoken way back in 1949 by a framer of India's constitution. Now, at the time, the nation was brand new. Literacy rates were really low, but its founders had what they called an abundant faith in the common man.
And they put that faith into this core principle: universal adult franchise. The idea is so simple, but it is absolutely revolutionary. It just means every adult citizen gets a vote, and every single one of those votes is counted equally. No ifs, ands, or buts.
And let me tell you, this change was radical. Before independence, voting was a privilege for the very few. We're talking only about 13% of the population. And it was all based on things like how much property you owned or your level of education. But then, with its new constitution, India turned that privilege into a universal right, basically overnight.
And to put that into a global perspective, get this. India gave women the right to vote from its very first day as a republic in 1950. That was more than 2 decades before a country like Switzerland did the same thing. So the point is, this idea of equality was baked into the system from the very beginning.
Okay, so that's the philosophy behind it all. But how does this massive system actually work in practice? Let's get into the nuts and bolts.
To really get a handle on the insane complexity of a national election, let's just borrow an idea from our source material and think about something way, way smaller. A simple school election for a class representative. Believe it or not, the core principles are exactly the same.
See, every fair election, big or small, needs a neutral umpire. And in India, that's the Election Commission, or the ECI. It's this completely independent body that was set up in 1950 with one job and one job only: make sure every single election is free and fair.
So just like a teacher makes sure the class election follows all the rules, the ECI does the exact same thing for the entire country. They manage literally everything from getting people registered to vote all the way to counting the final results.
So what does that fair process actually look like? Well, whether it's for a classroom or a country, it boils down to these 4 essential steps. 1, everyone knows the rules. 2, your vote is totally secret, which protects you from any kind of pressure. 3, the ballots are kept secure. And finally, 4, the counting is done out in the open. This simple framework is what allows democracy to work on such a mind-boggling scale.
But okay, what happens when your voters are spread out across massive cities, tiny remote villages, and some of the most difficult terrain on the planet? Well, this brings us to one of the core missions of the Election Commission.
Their guiding principle is no voter left behind. And you have to understand, they take this absolutely literally. There are incredible stories of election officials traveling for days, trekking through jungles, or hiking up mountains, sometimes just to reach one single solitary voter. That's the level of commitment we're talking about.
And that same commitment extends to making sure voting is accessible for every single person. This means things like having home voting for the elderly and people with disabilities, providing ballots in braille, and making sure all the polling stations are physically accessible with ramps and wheelchairs.
And this isn't just some nice idea on paper. The 2024 election was actually a huge milestone because it was the first time that home voting was made available across the entire country. That's a massive leap forward in making sure every voice can be heard. So, we've seen the incredible scale and the intricate system, but let's bring it all the way back to the individual. Why does that one vote, the one that officials travel so far to collect, why does it actually matter?
Well, on election day, your vote makes you equal to absolutely anyone else in the country. It's your direct say in the nation's future. It's the main tool you have to hold your leaders accountable. And at its core, it is the very foundation of governing yourselves.
That's a fair question, though, and it's a feeling people have in any democracy. You look at the ballot, you see the names, and you just don't feel represented by any of them. So does the system have an answer for that?
Actually, yes it does. It's called NOTA, which stands for none of the above. This is a real option, right there on the ballot. Now, voting for NOTA won't change who wins the election, but it is an official, recorded way to reject all the candidates. It's a quiet but powerful tool for voters to say, hey, we're not satisfied, we want better options.
So when you think about it, from a system that will cross mountains for one person's voice, to one that even gives you the right to formally reject everybody, it all comes back to the power held in a single choice. Whether you're endorsing a candidate or demanding better ones, the message you send becomes part of the world's largest democratic conversation. So the real question is, what message does your vote send?